Hey everybody, Shawn Tubbs here. Thanks for tuning in. I thought I would talk mics today and miking techniques, or at least the techniques that I use when I mic up for demos or for sessions. It doesn't really matter. This is a tried and true combination of microphones that I've been using for, oh gosh, well over a decade. And the mics I'm using are two mics. I'm using a Royer 121R, which is a fabulous mic. I don't know how long I've had this. I've had it a really long time. And the tried and true Shure SM57 microphone. And the way I use these guys is I use them together, and I have a certain way I like to align them as far as how I set them up. And a good way to start, especially with the Royer, is understanding where the ribbon is. So on this guy, the ribbon is actually along this flange. So you can see there's this kind of flange on both sides. And essentially the capsule is between those two flanges. So that gives me a really good idea of where the ribbon is on this microphone. And then of course, the capsule on the SM57 really isn't at the very front of this cover. It's actually more towards the back side of the cover, or maybe about an inch away from it. And the reason I'm pointing that out is it's really important to kind of understand, regardless of the mics that you have, where the capsules are in the microphones, because it makes it much easier to not get into a situation where you're actually where you've got the mics out of phase. And of course there's things you can do to check phase, but this is just one of the tried and true methods that I've been using over the years that just makes it super easy for me to place these mics. Now, as far as how I place them on a speaker, I've got a cab sitting up here that I took the screen off of. A lot of guys do this. This is nothing new, but I have found that this technique works really well. So we'll start with the Royer. And basically the way I place the Royer, or it would be really any ribbon mic that can handle the SPLs off the cab, is I'll usually place this guy. If you look at the cabinet, you have the speaker, and then what you've got the paper, and then you've got a dust cover over the center of the speaker. In general, what I always try to do with the Royer is look at the dust cover and kind of figure out where basically dead center on that dust cover is. So I'm pretty much going to place it right there. So it's pretty much centered on the dust cover. Now obviously as far as proximity goes, you're going to get more bass, especially with a ribbon mic, the closer it is to the speaker. So you may have to move it in or out depending on what type of sound you're wanting to get. But that's generally what I do. And then what I like to do with an SM57 or any mic of this type is I'll do the same thing. I'll look at this dust cover and I'll put the mic basically right on the edge of the dust cover. It doesn't matter how big that dust cover is, doesn't matter how the size of the speaker, 8, 10, 12, doesn't matter. I'll always put it right on the edge of the dust cover. And there's things you can do. You can go off axis, but for the most part, for me, I always want it basically dead on, as straight as I can get it off of that edge of the dust cover. Because if you put a 57 dead center right on the dome of the dust cover, it's just going to be really bright and just too nasty sounding. So I found that right there is the perfect combination to get kind of the low end that you want to get, but without getting super brittle, nasty top end. Now, when I want to use these two mics together, to go back to the point of understanding where the capsules are, so we know where the capsule is on the 57. It's about right. It's about right there. And then we know that the capsule on the Royer is along the flange. So what you want to do is have the two capsules as aligned as possible. Because if you make the mistake of thinking that the capsule's at the front of the Shure, basically you're almost an inch out of phase, which would not sound good at all. In general, you really want to keep your mics as in phase as possible, and an inch out of phase is actually quite a bit, especially when you're close miking. But the reason I love this technique is once I have these guys kind of set, it's really easy for me to move them, one way or the other on the cabinet. So if I'm finding, it's still a little too bright, I can go this way you know, and just kind of manipulate it however I want it. But these guys stay pretty much static. I don't spread them apart. I don't do this stuff. And once again, for me, it's just a technique that I've found that really, really helps me with my workflow especially, but also just knowing how the setup sounds at all times. So if I'm working up a demo of an amplifier or a guitar or an effects pedal, I'm never questioning, well, are these out of place or are these sounding different if I put them in a different spot? I've been using this setup for so many years now. It's just so trusted. And really, it's, you know, I'm getting all of, you know, the really sweet kind of low mids and big lows out of the Royer, and it does have a good top end, but it can be a little bit milky in my opinion. And with the 57, of course, you get all that crunchy top and the punchy high mids, but you don't necessarily capture all the low end that's coming off the cabinet. So in my case, it's really important that I get as honest an image to my Pro Tools rig as I can off the cabinet, and I never use EQ. I would rather just have the source be what it is, and then if it's in a mix or something, then, you know, if it has to be shelved or whatever to fit better, that's fine. But I don't want to be pre-EQing anything. I want it to be as honest a capture as possible. And of course, the preamp, I'll put up a picture of that so you can see it. The preamp I use is the Chandler TG-2. I've had that for, I don't know, 10 years now. Same thing. It's just a really great sounding preamp. There's no EQ on it. Basically, what goes in that thing is exactly what comes out. And for me, that's what I want in a great microphone preamp. Is really, I don't need it to color necessarily. I just want it to be honest once again in representing the image or what it's hearing from the microphones. So the setup is, it's a Royer and a 57. Into my Chandler TG-2 mic preamp. I come out of the Chandler mic pre into an Apogee Quartet, which I've had for a really long time, and those mic preamps are obviously bypassed, and then straight to Pro Tools. And that's my tried and true setup. I haven't changed it, like I said, in well over a decade. So I thought, yeah, it might be cool to just kind of let you guys check it out. So in the next segment, I'm just going to, you know, noodle around a little bit, let you guys hear the mics separately, so you can kind of get an idea of how this type setup works. So yeah, hopefully you guys can learn a little bit about how I do stuff. So check out the next segment. Okay, you guys, let's check out this mic setup. Basically, I think what I'm going to do is just kind of play a basic kind of medium crunch tone, just for the source, so you guys can hear what this setup's doing. So I'm basically using my Shure Bella for my clean kind of pedal platform. I'm going to use the Rocket Pedals Majestic for my crunch tone, and I think I'll just stay on the Filtertron pickup on my LSL. It's just kind of a basic crunch tone, so you guys can listen to these mics. So what you're hearing right there is both mics on. Both mics are centered in the mix. They're not panned left and right or anything like that. They're both centered, and they're both running at very close to the same exact level, so I don't have one hotter than the other necessarily. So what I'm going to do is I'll just solo up. Let's just listen to the 57 for a second so you can hear how that sounds. Now, it sounds really good. It's just, as I mentioned, it just doesn't get everything. It gets all that crunchy top and all those kind of higher mids, but not as much of the lows and the low mids. sounds really good, but not quite capturing everything I feel and can hear coming off of that cabinet in the room. So that's the 57. Now let's just listen to the Royer for a second. You'll notice it's going to be darker, but way bigger in the low end. And when I first started using the Royer by itself, it's like I loved that sound, but I always felt like I had to manipulate it later in the mix to add some more of that top end and crunchy high and stuff I was missing from, say, a 57. And that's why this has become such a kind of tried and true mic combination for me, is because I really want as honest as possible capture of the source. So, you know, I'll go back to both mics on. So now I'm getting that really cool low end that's big but not overwhelming, but at the same time I'm getting the top end and the high mids that I want using this combination. If I just shut off the 57, I've got that, which sounds okay. If I shut off the Royer, I've got that, and that sounds good. But once again, it's just there's kind of something missing unless I have them both on. Now keep in mind, everything I'm telling you is solidly etched in mud. I'm not saying this is the way everybody should do it. This is certainly the way I do it. You know, it's to each his own. I've just found that this combination has been the best combination well over a decade for me now. It's just something I'm used to. I know it sounds great. I know it's easy to set up, as you saw in the talking points. And it just really works well. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit from this about how I run my setup, and I'm going to try and start doing more of these in the future. So I always appreciate you guys tuning in and checking out what I got going. So we'll see you next time.